Hello guys, how are we doing and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is for those of you who want to improve on Hacienda Control. We're going to be looking at the spawn guides in a lot of detail, hopefully enabling you to, by the end of today, you're going to be able to say, okay, I'm here, that means the enemies are spawning here, or I've spawned here, that means the enemies are here, or here. And that's just going to really make you that step up and give you that big advantage that will hopefully enable you to get more wins, get more SR, and essentially rank up higher when you're playing Hacienda Control. For those of you who are new to this format of video, I've done a control spawn guide for the other two maps. I've done a hardpoint spawn guides for all of the maps now, and if you want to check those out, you can use the playlist down below that, or you can click my ranked guide link down in the description below. Completely free. It's got a guide on callouts, spawn guides, all those sort of things that you can have up on your phone, your tablet, your other monitor, or a laptop next to you, and you can, as I say, completely free. Check it out, and it will have all of the links to the other videos related to spawn guides in that too. Before we get into the video, a little bit of a quiz. Shout out to anyone who can recognize this background music. So have a think as we're going through the video what this is, and try and make your best guess without looking at the comments first, of course, because that would be cheating. So we're going to first take the perspective of the offense side. So the people who the players who are spawning in to attack the objective A and B here have got three main spawns. Okay, just for those of you who are trying to understand where the map is from a face down perspective, you've got fountain here, you've got the rock, fences, B, tins there, you've got the little boathouse up here, statue, P2 garage. I hope that gives you a little bit of familiarity. You can see, as I say, the main three spawns, are P2 in the garage, and then you've got two other spawns back lion. Now, if the defense team pushes up as far as rock, top middle area, and maybe through well, you will continue to spawn, or the offense team will continue to spawn in that P2's area, in that garage, okay? Now, with a slight bit more aggression from the defense team, we'll start to spawn you not P2, but all the way back line. Okay, so you can see if enemies are pushed up to this blue line, wherever this may be, you won't spawn here anymore. You'll in fact spawn all the way out here. Taking that one more step further, pushing up into P2, so that you can see there's not really much of the red zone that will cause you to spawn red, but pushing up into P2 will essentially block this blue spawn, making it, because it's, I guess, too close, and instead, if you've got people sort of aligned this far up the map, the spawn that opens up for the offense team is this red line spawn. So yeah, now there's one other spawn, which is something worth bearing in mind, and on both sides of this map there are squad spawn benefits which occur when you are spawning in just after a teammate spawns in and the enemy has absolutely zero map control, or very, very little map control. So you can see here on offense spawn, there's a spawn near fences. There's a general area near fences where this spawn will open up when you've just had a teammate run through this, and the enemy haven't really got map control. Okay, they're sort of behind this yellow line, and that'll essentially give you squad spawns for whoever on your team is running through this well side. Okay, and that's the easy thing to think about. But that's a very, if you're going to want to remember one thing, you only really want to remember the previous slide which we've just been through. But those yellow spawns can be something to just bear in mind, that sometimes you might spawn on a teammate, and that essentially just means that the enemy don't really have control of the map around you, and you're probably in a bit of a safe zone. Otherwise, you'd just spawn back at where you should have spawned. Now, looking at a good setup here and how you can spawn trap enemies who are spawning on this right-hand side of the minimap. As you can notice, there's you've got a teammate, you've got someone P2, you've got someone Zig, you've got someone sort of in lobby, and another player towards fences and B control. These are just an example. The logic here is that the defense team has got control of P2, lobby, plus someone watching the push through well. Okay, you don't really have to be this specific, but as long as you've got this really balanced push up the map without getting too deep into their spawn. For those of you who don't know, control will allocate a random spawn, or not so random, a spawn outside of this zone if this team pushes up too much. So you don't want to push up too much. You want to get to this sort of position, and you'll just have enemies flooding into your line of sight. And that's a real nice way to do it, and making sure you don't have gaps as well. And that's a good example of one where you wouldn't have gaps and you'd be able to manage a spawn trap pretty easily. Now, let's take some scenarios here. Okay, so as I say, this is probably what you want to remember if you are on the side that's spawning on the right, if you are trying to attack. Now, if you spawn P2, it simply means the enemy aren't pushed up towards your spawn. So they could maybe just have got to rock, maybe top middle, but they could potentially be through well. Okay, so if you spawn P2, they're behind this pink zone. If you spawn blue, all the way back here, just under my face, just under my arm here, it essentially means the enemy's got a little bit more aggression. They've maybe pushed up a little bit past rock. They might have lobby control, and they might be up well. So just coming out spawn a little bit more cautiously will enable you to maybe be a little bit more expectant of a gunfight. Now, if you spawn red, it's essentially the same thing as blue, but the enemies have also pushed through this left-hand side of P2. Okay, this right-hand side depends on which way you look at it. So just bear in mind that when you spawn in red, it definitely means they spawn P2, but they also might have people around well and lobby area. So again, be very cautious coming off of spawn. Now let's flip it on its head and see what the other main spawns are for the other side of the map. You've got 3 again, and it's very tight, which is why it's quite easy to spawn trap this side if you haven't already noticed. You've got a spawning boat, you've got a spawning garden, and then you've got spawning this little staircase between both boat and garden, all right? And they're the 3 main spawns. Now, if the offense team are only pushed up as far as rock, top middle, and tin or B area, the defense team will just continue to spawn boathouse over and over and over again, okay? They need to be pushed up a lot more than that for this to change. And this is where this pink zone sort of plays in, okay? So the staircase, I haven't got it labeled, but the staircase between boat and garden essentially is the spawn the defense team will spawn at if the offense team pushes a little bit past rock, and they're pushed maybe towards a little bit closer to hedge. They're pushed into office, so they've got good control of your top mid, and they're pushed up to long. So one player, it doesn't have to be all of these things. One player being in office will cause that spawn. One player being in long will cause that spawn, and one player maybe being in hedge will cause that spawn. The rest of their team could be all the way back here, but having one player pushed up this far in this pink zone will cause that spawn to happen, okay? Now, pushing it a little bit further causes the defense team to spawn in the garden, which is this little square thing back here, and it's usually one or this corner or this corner. It only takes the offense team to push up to hedge itself, maybe be behind the door of the boathouse, be pushed down the stairs of office or vault, and be on this headlong heady to spawn them here. So you've got to be very, and you can see it's such a narrow spawn where you can really capture the enemy spawn in there and really trap them in. Now, similar to the other side, there is a rogue squad spawn system, okay, where essentially if you have a teammate who's just spawned at one of these 3 and is running out towards the objective, and they're sort of in this red circle zone, you could spawn in next to them. But you will only spawn in next to them if it's safe, if the enemy isn't pushed. I mean, if you spawn, let's say a teammate of yours just spawned boat and they're about to run up towards rock and they're sort of in this vicinity here, if you spawn on them, it essentially means the enemies are nowhere near rock, or maybe they're just about here, but it could mean that they've pushed up a little bit through B, but it just essentially means that you're safe on this side of the map. Let's take this as another example, just so we're completely clear what I mean by this. Let's say you have a teammate who's died before you, and you've then died a few seconds later. They've spawned garden and start to run out of the spawn, and they get to about this position. You then spawn on them, okay? That can happen, as I say, if the enemy has no control of this zone at all. So this safe area, this buffer around this zone would mean that you've spawned there because the game has deemed it safe for you to spawn next to your teammate. It could mean that an enemy has pushed into rock and then maybe pushed through rock, but because you spawn this side, you're safe. So it does depend on which side you're spawning and whatnot for it to be a little bit, it's quite specific, but hopefully that makes sense. But as I say, that can happen very few times. I watched 6 VODs to get this data, and I only saw it happen a handful of times. So if that seems a bit complex, wipe out your mind. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You'll manage 99% of the time without this. So let's take a look at an ideal trap here. Okay, now again, the specific areas these players are in don't have to be this specific, okay? There are leniencies, and as long as the logic is followed, you're absolutely fine. So in this setup, you can see obviously you've got a player sort of sat on a hedge, or on this hedge area here, and it's their job to essentially make sure that an enemy can't get out of this boathouse, okay? Whether they're looking directly at this window or the door. Their job is essentially making sure they can't get out of the bows. Now, they don't have to be on the hedge heady. They can be pushed back a little bit further. They can be pushed up a little bit further. But essentially, they're owning that area. You've got a player in office who's there to support the hedge player, because this player can be isolated quite quickly by the enemy team. So this player in office can assist that player. Then you've got a player pushed up long who is essentially just clearing people out of spawn. As the people spawn garden and run through, zip, gone, deceased. All right. And then finally, obviously, because you're on offense when you are defending, when you're attacking this side here, you need somebody on time. So whether they're on A, whether they're on B, it doesn't matter. But the common thing here you can see is you got a person left, you have a person right, you got someone supporting maybe both of them, you're spawning them garden, and you've got somebody on the time just stopping that clock. Okay, if they're stopping that clock and you're getting kill after kill after kill, it doesn't matter. By the time you die, let's say this player dies, they spawn here, this player runs out, and it's another 50-50 run, maybe a little bit weighted towards this side, but it's another good way to really run down those lives. So yeah, let's take a look at some scenarios if you find yourself spawning in these spawn points. Okay, so if you spawn boathouse, it means the enemy have good map control. They could have good map control in this yellow zone, but they aren't in any sort of spawn trap territory. Okay, they may be pushed up to rock, they're pushed up to somewhat open and closed side of the top middle, and maybe they're pushed into tin or they're on B, that sort of area. Now, if you find yourself spawning pink at this little staircase here, it means enemies are starting to gain more map control, perhaps heading into office, hedges area, and long, and they're sort of trying to get that spawn trap set up. Okay, so if you find yourself spawning zig, or whatever you want to call this staircase here, just be wary. It might mean an enemy's in office window, maybe looking for you to come out of spawn. It could mean that they're set up on the rock. It could mean that they're waiting for you to come out of spawn from long, so they may be trying to set up a spawn trap from this left-hand side here, or this right-hand side, sorry. And then finally, if you spawn garden, the enemies are trying to trap you in. You can almost guarantee that's what it means. At least one player on the enemy team is pushed up to hedge, maybe. They may be pushed up towards this long heady. They may be pushed into bottom vault. So just be very careful and check each of these angles as you step out of spawn to make sure you can get out safely. Use your teammates' positioning. Let's say you spawn garden. Use your teammates' positioning to determine which route to head out of spawn is safest. So let's say you spawn garden and you've got teammates who've managed to get across to long and they're in plat and you've got B control. You're probably better off just following them up rather than trying to create your own route, because if your teammates have managed to get out this right hand side, it probably means the enemy is holding your hedge, and you know that's probably the safest route to go. So just use that to benefit you coming out of the spawn. And that's pretty much going to do it, guys. Hopefully it's made any sense. I hope. If you have any questions, leave it down in the comments below, or you can DM me on Disc or Twitter. Links to those, again, are in the description as well. And yeah, the main important thing is enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now.